Hello and welcome back to the show. I am super excited today because I am joined here with my guest, the message master, Glenn Rudin. And Glenn is really a master of helping businesses and individuals position themselves and create the perfect elevator pitch and the perfect message to deliver to their potential clients in order to explain their unique selling proposition and how they can deliver value to their clients. And in today's episode of the FLA podcast, we're going to be talking all about that and giving you guys some great tips on how to create your elevator pitch, how to create your perfect message so that you can explain your unique selling proposition to your potential clients so that they want to work with you and nobody else. So, a little bit about Glenn here. Glenn is again the message master, and he has helped many businesses in creating messages and has created many products that has launched into major retail brands like Walmart and Target. And Glenn is also the author of the book, A Brand in Your Hand, which is a really unique book that I really want to dig into a little bit here at the end of the show with Glenn because it is the first ever fully rhyming book in business to help you create a brand for yourself, which is super interesting. But Glenn, I am super excited to have you on the show and welcome.
Kobe, it is an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you for talking me up so nicely. I'm always thrilled to meet people in specific industries who I think can benefit from some of the principles that I love talking about. So I'm thrilled to be here with you on your podcast today.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to have you because I think right now, for our listeners who are mostly real estate agents, they could definitely use a lot of good tips and a lot of good strategies to position themselves better and create a brand that is actually built around delivering value to their clients. So, Glenn, I would love to talk a little bit more about who you are and a little bit about your background. So, before we get started, would you mind just sharing a little bit about your background and really how did you become known as the message master around here?
Sure. Well, so earlier in my career, I worked in large companies. I started in the cosmetics area, working for Revlon and Cheesebro Pond's and Shiseido Cosmetics, which is a Japanese conglomerate, and learned the principles of copywriting and packaging, brand development. So that started as the foundation of my career, really understanding how important that is. And if I fast forward to, say, the last 7 or 8 years, what I began to realize, Kobe, was that the difference between the products that I was working on in the cosmetic industry and the way people position themselves in the business world is not all that different. In other words, if you pick up any particular product, this particular bottle of water, it's got a label on it and it sits on a shelf somewhere in hopes that somebody will walk past it and be attracted to it. The difference between that bottle and you and I is we've got to label ourselves. In other words, the way we dress ourselves, the way we appear out in the world. But because we've got the ability to speak about ourselves, now we've got the ability to engage people based on what we say. So I realized about 7 or 8 years ago that people really are products too, and that they can be managed very much the same way brands are managed in the consumer marketplace. And that's really where I am now in terms of what I do for private clients and in speaking engagements is really helping people understand how to enhance their branding, their personal branding, their likability, and the way that we get people to engage with us versus products, again, that just sit on shelves. So that gives you a little bit of a background in terms of where we are now and how I became known as this message master was taking those principles of branding for products and applying them to people.
Wow. So that's really interesting because I think a lot of people don't think of themselves that way. They think of themselves as an individual who is, maybe bringing a product, right, in their business to the consumers. But they're not thinking about themselves as something that could be necessarily branded or something that could be, promoted in a way. And for real estate agents or anybody in the service industry, that's very important because you're not necessarily selling the real estate, you're selling yourself, right, as the service provider. So it is very important to brand you as an individual, right, for your potential clients. So you mentioned the principles of branding. So I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into that and get your take on what those principles are and how they can be applied to an individual when they are promoting themselves.
Love that. So let's start with the basics. Before we even get to say hello at meetings, whether it's virtual, whether it's your networking groups, your chamber of commerces, the different trade groups that you belong to, before you even get the chance to say hello, people are already looking at you, at your package, at literally how you look, how you frame yourself, your body language, literally the way you dress. Are you dressed appropriately for the business that you're in? So, for starters, right off the bat, your appearance has got to be in line with what people believe is professional for your level of business. And I've had this debate with a lot of different people, Kobe, in terms of, well, the way I just really shouldn't affect what I do. It's really all about what I do. But you have to keep in mind before people get to understand what it is you do or how it is you do it, they're already looking at you and making judgments about you based on the way you're showing up, body language, confidence levels, just the way you show that you feel like you belong someplace, or are you timid and introverted, don't really want to show up? If you're in the virtual world like you and I are now, what does your background look like? Have you at least mastered a virtual background so that when we're looking at you, we're not seeing your closet behind you or clothes strewn all over your dresser and things like that. So for starters, before anything else ever happens, we've got to make sure the appearance is right. In other words, comparing it again to the products that I worked on, you wouldn't put a product on a shelf that was scuffed up or out of its package. People would look at that and say, okay, maybe at a discount retailer, I'm going to buy it at a discount. It's damaged, it's used. That's not the first impression that a branding company, that a product company wants to make. They want the product on the shelf looking pristine. So you, by the same token, need to be on your shelf, so to speak, in a pristine fashion. So it starts there. That's the number one thing people have to remember.
Right, absolutely. And a lot of people, they don't think of that, right? As far as, making a first impression on somebody. And you always, talk about, in messaging, you want to make, a good first impression because that is how a lot of people make their decisions, right? When they look at you, do they actually want to work with you, moving forward? So that's very important as somebody who is trying to position themselves. And, just from what we've seen from clients and from, more specifically, if you worked with real estate agents, what are some things that you've seen, whether if, you meet real estate agents at a networking event, or maybe they were just somebody that you kind of ran into in the street, or if you walked into an open house, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen agents make when it comes to positioning themselves and making a first impression or not really doing a great job of that?
Well, so for me, for the most part, the real estate agents that I've encountered, let's say in my intensive networking over the last, 5 to 10 years, for the most part, I think that real estate agents will dress the part. Sure, occasionally some show up just a bit too casually for me, but I would say the thing that is then missing from that point going forward is an intentionality about the impression that they want to make based on their preparation for what they're doing. In other words, it's if you're in an open house situation and you're working in that house, of course, it goes without saying that you're going to going to know everything about the square footage in the house, when it was built, when improvements were made, hopefully what school district it is, and all those kinds of things. But I find that there's a general lack of inquisitiveness about the people who are strangers showing up. In other words, we want people to just sign in on a list where they're agreeing to be emailed. And the point is, why? What do we know about them so far that makes us think that they are the ideal candidate? Are they not just people potentially looking to get a sense for what the real estate value is compared to their house, which is around the block? What do we really know about these people And I know sometimes it's difficult to open up conversations that way, but I think it's really important to go into these meetings that you have with strangers or networking events that you're going to be a bit more inquisitive about potentially what people are looking for or who they know that might be looking for things. Because, one of the principles that I have about messaging is this idea. Not everybody that hears your elevator pitch, that hears your message, is your customer. Not everybody is, but everybody that hears your message definitely knows somebody that is, right? It's that 6 degrees of separation. I might not be looking to buy or sell a house right now, but chances are I've got a son or a daughter, a cousin, a niece, a nephew, somebody that I work with that does. And so even though I might not be your customer, your goal here is to try to win me over as somebody who really knows what I'm doing in this space, so that when you think about the fact that someone's going to need a real estate agent, I want you to be the person that I'm going to recommend to people in my network. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. And I think a lot of agents are not thinking about that as far as, you know, even if they are talking to somebody who may not be a client for them, that they know somebody else, right? A lot of agents are thinking about how can I convert this individual into a client, right? If they see somebody walk into an open house, you're absolutely correct. They want to make sure that you sign in so they can capture your information and email you, right? Put you on an email newsletter list, put you inside of their CRM, and hopefully convert you one day. But you're not looking necessarily for is this person, even in this open house to look to buy a house, right, in the market, or are they just looking around, or are they just snooping on their neighbors, right? Whatever it is that they're doing and what their intentions are. And agents don't necessarily do a great job of that when it comes to speaking with clients, and especially in more networking settings or open house settings like that. So something else that I think is very important for real estate agent, especially now moving forward, is because of these new commission compensation lawsuits that are coming out that are requiring agents to essentially get buyer compensation agreements signed before they can represent buyers as clients. Um, Pretty much, I think a lot of agents are kind of panicking at this point because in the past they've never really had to craft their message, right? They've never had to just craft their unique selling proposition and present to somebody, especially a buyer, why they should work with them. So, and you see this a lot in the real estate industries because agents are, people say are interchangeable. So, from your opinion, what would you say are a good starting point for a real estate agent to start crafting their unique selling value in order to differentiate themselves as an agent in the marketplace and not just, another face on realtor.com?
Right. And I love this question also. And so this is one of the key um, issues that I have with real estate agents. So the first one is that not every person that walks in the door is your ideal client. And by the same token, not every real estate agent is the ideal agent for the person walking in the door. Now, I know the thought is anybody that comes in is my potential customer. And I get that. In a business where it's sales and commission driven, you don't want to let people walk away from you. But if you truly want to specialize in what you're doing and you truly want to show an air of confidence in what you're doing, then to me, the best negotiation is the ability to position yourself as an expert in the area that you're working. So let's say a neighborhood. And I can use Long Island as a great example here where I am. If you're not familiar with the geography, Long Island is about 150 miles from one end to the other, two counties and hundreds of little towns and hamlets and school districts and everything from $50 million mansions out in the Hamptons to clustered living and plus 55. So it's everything. Everything is here. And what I'll hear when I go to networking meetings from real estate agents is I'm an expert on Long Island. And it really takes me back. So I think to myself, how in the world could you possibly be an expert on this piece of real estate? It's not possible. And when you do that, you sound a little silly. because anybody who's listening to you knows you couldn't possibly know everything about the east end of Long Island versus the west end of Long Island, the two different counties, all the school districts, everything that goes into it. So to me, it's really important to establish your expertise in an area that you do specialize in, and an area where you can take ownership of that area because you truly do know it well. And and use that as your starting point. And then say, hey, I'm going to start with this town. I'm going to become an expert on this town so that when I'm potentially selling a house in this neighborhood, I can flex my muscles a little bit and I can talk to potential customers who are walking into an open house or a networking event and say, if there's anything you want to know about this particular area, I am an expert on that and I can tell you all about it. You don't have to buy anything from me, but if there's anything you want to know about the tax structure, the school system, the taxes that go on in the town, what future planning is all about, what's going on in terms of construction, new building, and otherwise, I really know this market well. Become an expert in that market. Think about all the transactions that are going on in that particular town that may be 15,000 people that live there, and become an expert there. Become the person that really is the go-to person in that area rather than trying to generalize and say you can handle anywhere. Build up a referral network for other neighborhoods where other people are like-minded like you. And you can say, listen, if someone's coming into my area, you can refer them to me. If they're going to your area, I'm comfortable with your expertise in that area. I can refer them to you. I think it makes you a lot stronger as a real estate professional when someone comes to you and you truly don't have expertise in that market, but you can introduce them to somebody else under your real estate company's umbrella and introduce them to that person and say, listen, I'd love to represent you, but for you really to be served the best, I want you to start working with Kobe because he really knows that market inside and out. And I'll be happy to refer you to other people in other areas who know those markets inside and out. And likewise, if you know somebody in my market who's looking for something in this area that I specialize in, I'd love the opportunity to school them on this area. Now, that was a long-winded answer, but hopefully it really drives home the point. Don't try to be everything to everybody in every transaction that goes on. You can't, and you start to sound foolish when you show yourself off as that's what you are.
Right. When you want to serve everyone, you're really serving no one, right?
Exactly.
You want to make
Exactly.
sure that you specialize in
Right.
who it is that you're working with and what it is that you can provide to this avatar that they're looking for that is unique to you. So that is very important. And a lot of agents, they are generalists, right? You see it all the time in the industry. There's really no agents that are specialists that are out there. There's a lot more, I think, recently because of the good, messaging and the good branding of branding experts that are out there, other people in the real estate industry who've done well in niching down and specializing, has, provided a great example for agents recently, but still you see a lot of agents is probably the weakest point in the real estate industry is agents don't know how to specialize and how to pick a niche or something like that. So as far as picking a niche, right? So there's the neighborhoods and specializing in a specific local area, which is super important, right? You definitely don't want to cover, right, a huge, 2-hour radius because that just becomes impossible. And for the agent themselves, that becomes very inconvenient as well, right? Having to drive back and forth like that. But what other types of niche should an agent try to kind of specialize down into? Do you suggest an agent go just, start out with a neighborhood, or do you suggest that an agent starts out with a neighborhood and then also niche down 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 levels into that as well, such as, I'm a specialist in this neighborhood, but I'm also a specialist in helping 55 and up, uh, individuals as well.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think that it's important to establish yourself in a particular neighborhood. The area that I live in here, my specific town, there's an agent here that I have had dealings with in the past. And as I do walks or jogs around the neighborhood, I'm going to say that 50% of the time that a house goes on the market, this woman's name is attached to the sign out in front of the house, out in front of the for sale sign. She has truly positioned herself as the go-to person for moving houses in this neighborhood. She knows what she's doing. She's been doing it for a long time. She owns the lion's share of the transactions here. And to me, it just goes to prove out that concept. Own your neighborhood, become the go-to person where you are. So that's a great one. The other one you just mentioned, probably one of the hottest ones around right now. All of the baby boomers that are looking to get out of their homes and move into these very popular 55 plus communities, why not become an absolute expert on the 55 plus communities, as you said, that geographically are located near where you are? And if somebody's interested, they talk about moving out of state. Why not try to develop a relationship with somebody who's down in the Carolinas, with somebody who's down on the west coast of Florida, where again, you can refer somebody to the people down there. You can't manage that transaction. You're not going to be down in Florida when that happens. But if you come up with a collaborative agreement with somebody else who's in that market, that I'm sure you can find, I'm sure there's real estate boards and Facebook groups and ways that you can find go-to reliable agents that you would trust with the transactions you're doing and know that there would be a referral fee coming back to you when that happens. And so to me, that would be second. Number one, the neighborhood. Number two, the type of customer, right? So develop that expertise on, get yourself really thoroughly engrossed in all of the information that people who are 55 plus need to know. What are the tax situations when you sell their house? What kind of advice can you give them as far as staging their current house? Because a lot of times people who are 55 plus have been in their homes for a long time. The bathrooms haven't been updated. The house doesn't look like it's brand new. Become an expert on how to stage houses like that and give out that kind of advice, because here's the next really important point. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard this, but it's always got to be hammered home. People buy and sell things with people they know, like, and trust. So if you're just a total stranger, somebody doesn't know you, you can't get to like and trust. But if you can spend time at your networking meetings being informational, giving out great information, not being insecure about doing that and saying, great, now I'm going to give out all my information, someone's not going to need me. It's just the opposite. When you establish yourself as that expert, you are the person that in private somebody is going to reach out to and say, I heard you at the last networking event talking about your expertise in the advantages of being 55 plus and selling your current home, how to make the most of that transaction. You know what? I'd love to hear more about that. Develop a one-on-one relationship with that person, get them to know you, have a coffee meeting with them, get them to start liking and trusting you. And as you start to build out that network of valuable people who you've taken the time to cultivate, not only will they become potential customers, but as they start to like you, they will start to refer you to the other people they know. Because one thing people who are 55 and over have in common is they know other people who are 55 and over and are thinking about this kind of transaction. So if you become that go-to reliable person, oh yeah, Kobe knows all the stuff about this. Other people are going to want to meet with you also and understand what their options are. So that's all about building a network, getting people to know, like, and trust you, because when they trust you, they will refer you to other people they know. And that's how you start to build out a referral network of people who will come to you. And it's much more effective than any advertising you can do in the local penny saver or shopper that you do. It's much more effective than anything you're going to do on Instagram or TikTok. Yes, those things are all great for people to go and look at. But most important is developing your reputation in your marketplace as a go-to person that people know, like, and trust, and think have the information that they need, that they want to get from you.
Absolutely. Once you become that person that has helped enough individuals or even just provided information to enough individuals that is helpful and useful, even if you weren't their agent, they're going to know somebody else who will need an agent. and they're going to remember that, hey, this person came and maybe they did a seminar, a free seminar for us on how to get into 55 and up communities, or this person did a free home buying seminar or a home selling seminar or something like that, right? Because once you deliver value to somebody once, even if it's for free, they're going to want more from it, from you, more value from you, because they know that you can deliver, if you will. So something else I think a lot of agents struggle with is coming up with that perfect elevator pitch, right? So a lot of agents, they can go on and on for hours, if you will, and talking about what they do, how they do it, why they're in real estate, all that good stuff. But if you give them, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, you meet somebody in a networking event, you don't get to spend an hour with them, right? You have to make sure that you tell them exactly what it is that you do in that short period of time. So when it comes to crafting a quick elevator pitch, is there a framework that you have that you teach to people or that you use personally when it comes to making that huge bio of yours a little bit shorter and really highlighting the important points?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And one of the things that I say in my own pitch is that 9 out of 10 people that I come in contact with don't have a solid understanding of their elevator pitch, their personal brand, their appearance, what kind of impression they're making. 9 out of 10 people. And so if you're one of those people, I've got ways to work with you by interviewing you, taking time with you, bringing you under my wing, and helping you understand the value that you have, and then helping you articulate that value in messages, on websites, and the literature that you hand out. So one of the things I teach my elevator pitches very succinctly. And so here's a couple of really key pointers to start with. 30, 35 seconds and absolute. No selling, absolute. These are before you even get started. Number three, you've got to be preparing it before you show up at the meeting. So now let's talk about some of the elements that go into a great elevator pitch, in my judgment. Number one, you've got to understand the idea of that pitch is you're not selling anybody anything. The idea of being effective with your elevator pitch is to get somebody interested enough in what you said to want to follow up with you either immediately or right after the meeting to get more information on you and what you do. That's it. We're not looking to get people to sign up for anything. We're not looking to get people to come to the next seminar. We're trying to say something that will be interesting enough to get people listening in and want to get more information about you and what you do. So if you go into it understanding that and you realize there is no selling, it takes a lot of the pressure off of you thinking that in order to be effective here, you've got to have people pulling out contracts with you right after you do this. And that's not the idea. The idea is to get, let's say you're at a meeting of 30 people, Kobe. To me, a super effective pitch means that 3 to 6 people will approach you after the meeting to say, I heard your pitch and I would like to get some more information. That to me is an excellent and realistic expectation because that means people have really listened to what you said and they truly do want more information, as opposed to the people who go to these meetings with the idea of, are we going to pass out cards? And now they collect 30 cards out of 30 people are, at an event, but they have no idea why they got the card. They just want to put people on a mailing list. But the truth is, why do you want to email somebody who's not interested in what you're doing? Serves no purpose. So being effective means understanding going in what you're trying to do, create a further interest in what you do. Now, every pitch has 3 elements to it. The first one is a really strong introduction, which is a question or a statement about what you do. So as a, for instance, for the real estate market, did you know, and I'm making this up because I don't know it specifically and I haven't studied it. Did you know that 75% of the homeowners who are 55 plus lose 20% of the value of their homes because they don't understand how important it is to stage them for younger people? Wow, that's a really interesting fact. So if I'm 55 and over, now I'm showing off my expertise on what it is in that particular market. if I wanted to back it up a little bit. Did you know, and put some fact in there about either the market that you're an expert in or the type of customers that you want to represent? Because again, remember, not everybody who's your customer is sitting in that immediate audience, but everybody in that immediate audience, if you're effective, thinks, I know somebody 55 plus. I want to introduce them to this real estate agent because they're making sense here. They know things specifically and address things specifically to that market. So that's number one. Come up with a statistic or a question that addresses your key customer. Super important. And you've got to have that well rehearsed so that when it comes out of your mouth, it sounds not mechanical, very natural, but you know it and you can do it without any ums and ahs. And I'm going to give you some pointers about elevator pitches at the end of this as well. Second one, Second one is some type of reason that you do something different than somebody else. In other words, now I give this statistic about 55 and overs, and then I say, my entire practice is based on efficiently helping 55 plus people not only sell their homes for the best they can, but also finding that next step for them. So for me, it's not just one step, it's two. Now, that also completely differentiates you from other agents. Right off the bat, you're speaking about your expertise in 55 plus. And secondarily, you've got an advantage that you utilize when you're helping somebody 55 plus. It's not just selling their home, it's also helping them get settled in that next transaction. It's a great 1-2 punch. And you can use that regardless of what niche you want to go after in the market. And then finally, you want to use some type of engagement that gets people thinking about those two, which is what makes it effective. Now, does that just come rolling out of your mouth, Kobe? Absolutely not. It only happens if you take the time, and this is what I work on with my clients all the time, writing these things out, spending time putting them down on paper in a Google document and wordsmithing them over and over and over again till we find just the right combinations of words, phrases, questions, statements that do create this short little speech that gets people listening in and thinking, I've got to speak to that person after the meeting because they know exactly what I want to know about this market, or my parents are going to be selling a house. This seems like the right person to help them move that transaction. So it's your introduction. It's what's unique about the way you do it that makes you stand out from other agents. And then it's creating engagement between those two. And then when you're wrapping it up, and only when you're wrapping it up, do you throw in, by the way, my name is Glenn Rudin. My agency is called. I've got cards if you want to get together after the meeting so that we can be in touch with one another. In other words, so many people start their pitch out with their name, with their company name, and you're wasting our attention spans by doing that because we're not buying you. We're not buying your agency. We don't even know if we're interested in what you have to say. And you've used up most of our attention span with information that until you've made yourself more relevant just doesn't matter to us. And people do this all the time. And the reason they do it is because they're not prepared. And the easiest thing to do is say, hi, I'm Glenn Rudin. I own Always Been Creative. I'm known as the Message Master. I've now told you a bunch of things about my company that matter to me, but don't matter to you whatsoever. Hope all that makes sense to you.
Oh, for sure. And that is something that people don't think about when they're going into elevator pitches or any type of branding for that matter. It's a good principle, right? Even for marketing or creating landing page copy or any type of content that is out there. It's not necessarily promoting what's important to you. It's promoting or, putting out there what it is that you can do for other people, right? Why would somebody else care about what you do? Not necessarily why you would care about what you do. We know that, right? We know why you care about what you do, but why would somebody else care about what you do? So that's very important. And you're right, people have not such a very long attention span, so we want to make sure that we pique their interest and curiosity first instead of going in there and trying to, take up 15, 30 minutes of their time and try to sell them on that first conversation. That doesn't really work most of the
Right.
time.
Right. And keep in mind again, with those attention spans really dwindling in those first 10 or 15 seconds, that opening statement that you make, number one, it's got to be delivered clear. And I will advise anybody who's listening to me, maybe not on a Zoom call because it's not effective, but if you're in person, stand up, take a deep breath. When those round robins of introductions are going around the room at your next networking event, you stand up. You stand up and have the confidence to belt out your pitch. I guarantee you, everybody else in the room is going to be, wow, what's going on there? Right? That will right away show people that you've got a level of confidence that most people don't. And that matters. That really matters. Second, even though you're going to do this pitch and you're always going to be wordsmithing it, trying to come up with just the right combination of words that is going to resonate with the people who are listening, you always have to do it with great enthusiasm. Because if you deliver your pitch and you seem like, oh yeah, I'm the real estate person from East Northport, and if you're looking for a home or somebody here, then get in touch with me. You sound completely disinterested in what you're doing. Well, if you're not interested in what you're doing, why would we be? I've got one of the keynotes that I do is called "Would You Do Business with You?" And so if you took the time and you used your mobile phone and you tape yourself doing your elevator pitch, watch it and think to yourself, if I was in a room and I saw that, would I follow up and want a card? Would I be interested in hearing more? Or does the person giving it me look disinterested, bored, afraid, intimidated? Because these are not positive attributes that people aspire to want to be around. People want to be around people who are confident. You're now entrusting somebody to sell your home, which is worth 300, 400, 500, $1 million. Do you really want to hand it over to somebody who seems timid and meek and not really confident in what they're doing? Of course not. But by the same token, you also don't want to turn it over to somebody who is cocky and obnoxious, and you don't want to be in the room with them. So there's a fine line there between overconfident and cocky, and confident and not confident, and timid and introverted. And I know that 75%, this is a real number, 75% of people struggle with public speaking. And so there's no getting around that. And if you're in that statistic, which 3/4 of the population is, you've got to work on your public speaking. You've got to work on your confidence level. You've got to work on your ability to make eye contact with the people who are in your immediate vicinity and seeing you. And you've got to come across as somebody who's confident in what they're doing, because people are going to be trusting you with potentially the biggest financial transaction in their lives. They want to do that with somebody that they feel has their back, but also is confident in what they're doing.
For sure. And that was some really good tips on how real estate agents can position themselves in their elevator pitches and really present themselves as somebody who is not just confident, but really a competent individual to help clients or potential clients, buy or sell their homes. And that is something that is very important, regardless of the business you're in my opinion, but definitely very important for real estate agents as well. And really, Glenn, I want to wrap up here and talk a little bit about your book, "A Brand in Your Hand." And so just real briefly, how did this idea come about? What is this book about? It seems so interesting. I'd love to hear the kind of the background and the backstory about it.
Yeah, so I set out to want to write a book as a professional speaker. And one of the things that a lot of speakers do is they just take one of their keynote addresses and reduce that to a script and then edit it into a book. And I started to do that. And I started thinking to myself, you're a guy who's got light bulbs all over the place. You call your company Always Been Creative. And so I decided I wanted to do something much more creative. And being a big fan of Dr. Seuss books, both when I was little and when my sons were growing up, reading those constantly to them. And I loved the sing-songy rhymes and the way Dr. Seuss told stories. And I started thinking, there's really not Dr. Seuss for adults, yet we all were spoon-fed on this kind of work when we were growing up, this kind of book, this kind of literature. And people do love and remember poetry. Roses are red. violets are blue, whatever the rest of that rhyme was, um, in your particular area. So I thought to myself, gee, what if I created this Dr. Seussy type book for adults, a brand in your hand, and I wrote it about serious business topics, messaging and elevator pitch and branding, but I did it and challenged myself to do it in rhymes. And that's what I did. And I created, I didn't do the drawings, but came up with the concept. So, here's a good, for instance, this is a whole section on mission statement. Just why are you doing this? And so you can see that first paragraph there. Before you can earn your audience's trust, defining your mission is a definite must. Just what are the problems that your brand will solve? Will what you're proposing cause us to evolve? And the whole book is written like that. There's sections in here that, where you can actually work on little worksheets where you can work on your mission statement. And the back of it even has a journal where you can start to record your journey along the way. So the idea was really to create something both for entrepreneurs, for students, for people who are starting new businesses who don't necessarily come from a business and branding background. So is it a detailed tome on the history of Procter and Gamble or Coca-Cola and all the famous brands? No, it is not. I don't pretend that it is. But what it is an introduction to all of these key concepts in branding and marketing that I think every person should be aware of, like elevator pitch, like personal branding. And it's done in a fun way that people can easily absorb, in an hour or two, and then keep handy as a reference guide to go back and say, what was his rhyme again about personal branding? Go back to that rhyme, and it immediately tunes you in again to what you should be thinking about when it comes to that particular topic.
Wow, that's awesome. And you could see, I don't know if you saw, but just reading that first paragraph, or hearing you read that first paragraph put a smile on my face. So
Love
I think
that.
a lot of people, they gravitate towards, rhyming and things like that. And, like you said, we grew up on nursery rhymes and children's books, right? Like Dr. Seuss. And this really, I think, puts I will say a positive connotation or a positive feeling. And we can align that with creating a perfect message, or creating a mission statement, a brand, and it makes it, in my opinion, a really fun exercise as well. So definitely recommend people go out there and get this book. And I think I'm definitely going to be getting it as well.
Oh, wow.
But Glenn, I appreciate you. You shared a ton of value with us here today. And for people who are watching this or listening to this that want to reach out to you or want to just learn more about what you do or want to get their hands on your book, A Brand in Your Hand, what are some of the best places that they can actually reach you or find information about what you do and how you do it?
Okay, super. So for starters, alwaysbeencreative.com, just spelled out, alwaysbeencreative.com. That's my website. And when you get on that website, the first thing it asks you is, are you serious about developing your brand? And there's a link right there on the homepage to set up a free, and I emphasize this, free 30-minute strategy call with me. Now, I know you hear that a lot and in the coaching ranks that people do that stuff. And here's my promise to you. There is absolutely no selling on that call. It usually ends up going a lot further than just 30 minutes. And I promise you that you will hear some profound things about the way you are doing business, some tips on strategy, on the next things that you should be working on. Very often, because I'm just good at this kind of thing, it just seems to come naturally to me. I will have great ideas for you on what you should be doing next. I'd love you to do them with me, but there's no obligations along those lines. So why wouldn't you take the time to book a free call? That's the number one way to get in touch with me. If you just want to write to me, it's Glenn at alwaysbeencreative.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Glenn Rudin. I'm the only one up there. I'm constantly posting content on branding, messaging, and strategy on LinkedIn. Same thing on Instagram, where it's Glenn underscore Rudin underscore message underscore master. I am very findable out there in the digital world, and I love having people come to me with challenges and questions, and certainly connecting with them via these one-on-one Zoom calls. It's one of the things that I really look forward to every week. Who's going to show up? Who's going to take the time and challenge themselves to want to hear some real feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, about their business? And I promise I'm gentle with people, Kobe. I'm not mean-spirited about it, but there's a lot of things that people need to hear about the way they're trying to do business now that are just not working for them. And that's what I love to do. So if you want the opportunity to connect with me, please do that.
Yep, absolutely. We'll make sure to leave the links to all of that in the description in the show notes down below. So that way it is easy for you to find. But other than that, Glenn, thank you again for being on the show. Before we let you leave here, is there any last pieces of advice, any last tips you want to just leave with our audience?
I do. This means the world to me to get the opportunity to say this to people. Now, I work with college students, I work with people who've been in business for a long time, and with entrepreneurs. You can be great at whatever it is you want to do. You've already got the experience, you've already got the know-how. You just need the confidence. I started um, comparing this to the movie The Wizard of Oz. If I can be the wizard for any of you who are out there, you already have the brains, you already have the heart, you already have the courage. If you just need me to be that person to remind you of that, let me be, because it would be an honor to do that. But follow the yellow brick road to my website in that call, and let me free you from the things that you think are holding you back, because I promise you they're not. It's you that we just need to reframe. Nothing else in the world. You've got the opportunity to do whatever you want and do it well. You just need to make that choice.
Wow, that was wonderful advice, man. And appreciate you. Appreciate you for tuning in, and we will see you on the next show. Take care.